Welcome to this class today where we're discussing assignment 2 and what is required, and then we'll go on and do a review of the weekly topics and how they relate to assignment 2, and we'll also consider some of the other themes that we've covered and how you can include them. So looking at assignment 2, you're asked to do a research paper that's going to focus on either race or indigenous, on class and inequality, or on gender. And this follows on from the first assignment, where you're asked to look at one of the 3 theories. And the first of these theories was structural functionalism, where we have structures and functions that make society work well. The second of the theories was on how there's conflicting values, that is, the white middle-class male, they determine what happens, whereas if you're female, not white, not middle class, but in the lower working class, you miss out. And so there's lots of difficulties. And then the third area of discussion is the way in which symbols and language and relationships and interactions shape the way we engage with society. So there are 3 big theories we looked at in assignment 1. Now in assignment 2, we want to take this further and look at the challenges of race, such as indigenous, class, such as inequality due to working class, and gender. So you choose one of those. And then we're suggesting that you're going to gather your information. And then one of the challenges is that, having gathered the information about education, you've gone to Google Scholar, you've put into Google Scholar, teacher education, pedagogy, sociology, race and culture, and you've put in the names of some specific indigenous groups that you might be looking at, such as the Rudri group, or the Yagero group, or the Turrbal group. So you put those in, you're doing a bit of search, and you're gathering the information. So as students are saying here, you've gathered the information. The challenge now is you've got lots of scattered information. How do you weave it together into one assignment? And the challenge is to have one main thesis, argument, or statement. And I would think in this case, education has great opportunities, it has great goals, there's great benefits for Australian children, all of the Australian children. However, Indigenous Australians miss out. And so you could then have your second point. So the first point is education has great benefits. Point 1b, however, Indigenous Australians, such as the Wiradjuri people or the Yagera people, they miss out. And we're including one specific group because that makes it more focused and specific, lifts the whole thing. So they miss out. And then we've got the reasons why they miss out. So we've got quite a few of these reasons, and the 8 ways is one way of tackling the reasons they miss out. And then 1C, we want some answers. And so the proposed answers, as we listen, we include, we value. And so, Nicole, we're saying here that we've got one sentence which sums up what the essay is about. And we may even use that sentence as the first sentence in the paragraph and in the essay. And it would say, while education for Australians has many benefits, Indigenous Australians often miss out on these benefits due to their cultural differences and differences in ways of learning. And this essay seeks to offer some answers to this challenge. So it's a single sentence offering one single focused thesis or approach to our essay that sums up what we're doing. And it's right there in the first paragraph of the essay. And then we unpack that. And then in the conclusion of the essay, having looked at the benefits of education and some of the reasons why Indigenous Australians, such as the Wiradjuri people, miss out, this essay has shown that teachers can take some strategies such as valuing, listening, including, and so on. So does that help, Nicole?
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether in that introductory part that you would include what theories that you're using.
Yes, certainly you could. And then you would unpack that theory in paragraph 2 or 3. And so your theory could be theories on race, or it could be theories on Indigenous studies and the nature of Indigenous studies. It could be theories on culture. So I've really liked the theories on culture and what culture is, and using those theories on culture, which I've used quite a bit in the past. And so under Google Scholar, if you go to theories on culture, and then you've got here some theories on culture, and you've got a resource on theories of culture. And then if you open that up, you can, people say that language shapes culture and worldview shapes culture. And so you got here a bit of theory. So that's one approach. Gertz argues that culture is about, and he describes what it's about. So that's one theory that you can use. I've never done much on theories on race. And so if I went to Google Scholar and I was to look at theories on race, I've always been fearful of theories on race because it could lead into dangerous ideas.
Could you
I tend to use,
could you possibly use the theories that we used in the previous assignment?
Yes, you can. And
yeah.
you have to be careful that you don't use about more than 5%. But which theory would you use from the previous assignment, Nicole?
Well, I'm thinking of structural functionalism.
Yes.
Talking a little bit about the differences in structure that the education system has in comparison to how Indigenous learn, and also, so I'm kind of weaving in the three. I have a little bit of information on symbolic interactionism in the way the Aboriginals learn. I haven't put it all together, and the conflict that arises from the differences. So
I like that. I think every one of these is a paragraph. And so you've got theories from the previous assignment on structural functionalism, and you're saying differences in the structure and functions in modern Western education systems and Indigenous societies mean that. And so you've then got the modern Western approach, which focuses on writing and focuses on complex abstract theories of the ancient Greeks, whereas the Indigenous society has different structures and functions built around elders and built around oral, etc. So I think that's a wonderful paragraph there, and it can be more than one paragraph. And then you move on to theories of structural interactionism, also useful for understanding this, and then you grow that into a paragraph. And then you got conflict as another discussion, and you grow that into a paragraph. So I think you got three nice paragraphs that flow one to another, that build on the one argument that education has benefits, Indigenous Australians missing out, this is why, and the answer. Yeah. So I think it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You're working on these different parts of the jigsaw, the introduction, three or so key concepts on the way through, such as structural functionalism, which has application in your classroom. You want as much structure oriented towards as much function, that is learning ethics, learning to care for one another, etc. But at the same time, you want to recognize that it's disadvantaging girls when you're favouring boys, or disadvantaging boys when you're favouring girls. It's disadvantaging the non-white when you're favouring the white, and so on. And then you've got symbolic interactionism helps to understand. So you've got three lovely little discussions there. So that's great, Nicole. Really like that. David, what theory are you looking at? What ideas? What will assignment 2 focus on for you, David?
In terms of the theory, I was looking at, forgive me if I mispronounce his name. I'm thinking of looking at Weber, and maybe a more focused dive into Emile Durkheim, because I really found his work interesting. And he was quite prolific in his work around conflict theory.
I love that. I think that's really good. And then are you going to look at a particular either class inequality, or what sort of other things out of race, is it class inequality, or what will you look at, David?
I'm thinking of class inequality.
Right.
I've been interested in that part of this unit.
Yeah.
Like the class conflict sort of stuff.
And which people in either working class or troubled class do you find are missing out?
Probably the troubled class.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not like to say it, just in my opinion, just to say it was like the working classes, and I don't think that holds as much water as it used to.
Yes.
But because you're left with people today that might not have access to the same stuff that everyone else does, like particularly immigration families or low socioeconomic background families.
Yeah, I think there's lots that you can explore there, and then your idea of then looking at Max Weber and then Emile Durkheim and conflict theory, I think really will go very, very well. So
Yeah,
why do troubled students? Yeah, how do you think you'll
because
go with it?
I think I'll go really well with it, because I've done 2 placements where I had a school that had a lot of low socioeconomic students, and then I actually taught a class that was from a background where they didn't have access to a lot of things. So it'll be interesting to see what the academia says about it.
And each one of these terms, like low socio-economic status or students, and then if we do a search on teaching and pedagogy, and so you're really wanting to find about 8 to 12 or so scholarly resources around one discussion area that you're working on, and then you got the citation here, so you can cut and paste Cummins is the resource, and then you can go to Cummins. And so if we go to Cummins, then we can read that and do a summary. And then if you're short of time, then the fastest way to get the resource is to read the abstract and the introduction and the conclusion. And sometimes that's almost all you need from 8 to 12 or so resources. And so here's the resource coming up now. And then you quickly have a read through. And so at the beginning, this author argues that pedagogical approaches for low-income students, it's not really working. There's a number of problems. And then he argues the causes of the problems and potential answers. So there's a lot of material there. And then the Max Weber on lower socioeconomic class, if you go into here, again, teacher education, so Max Weber, lower socio-economic students missing out or something. And then how we approach, we've got culturally responsive to lower socioeconomic. We can read it here. We've got a citation of it here that we can make a copy of there. So again, notice I'm trying to move fairly quickly because you don't have a lot of time. There's other things happening. But if you can move quickly and really get into it and get the 8 to 12 scholarly resources, you can really do well with these resources. And it becomes really, really interesting as you begin to identify why are they missing out? What are the answers? And so anything with down the side here that we can access, it's really good. If we can't access it, we can at least have a look at it. For instance, this one here, we can't get to it, but it's actually Google Books, so we can read it, but it's written by Max Weber himself. So if you read this before you went to sleep at night, David, and you dreamt of it all night, you could wake up next morning with a German accent and sounding a bit like Max Weber. So yeah, so I always think it's good when you can get into the original writings of the scholars. And
yeah, I found some of Durkheim's original works as well, some of the books he published for the first assignment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's
good.
so good. How did you feel when you found those, David? Was that a bit of a joy to
It
read some?
was. I was initially thinking when I saw it, because I was on ProQuest and I saw Emil Durkheim, and I'm going, please tell me this is the right Durkheim.
Yeah. So, and it looks like here they've got some Max Weber books that you can read for free. And as you say, it's the right Durkheim and the right Max Weber. So I really like that. So Matthew, and then Nicole and David. So Matthew first, do you have any more questions about assignment 2, Matthew?
Not at the moment, no.
Sounds good. Nicole, any more questions about assignment 2?
I think I'm getting there. It's just the theories that is messing with me at the moment.
Yeah.
But,
So with the
yeah.
theories, I would suggest majoring on one concept and one major theory, and then stepping into maybe about 3, what I'm calling the minor theories. So you really want one major thing that you're saying,
Yeah.
such as, you know, the main cause of inequality and the main answer. And then within that, you're wanting some other things that you can discuss to make it more interesting, which can be structural functionalism, which can be reasons for conflict, which can be the symbolic interaction. So you can move into that once you're a third of the way into the paper and you're wanting to get into some of the complexities. And then you got to draw it all together again, particularly in the conclusion, but also towards the end of the essay. And so it's a bit constructing, a bit like building a table or a chair. You've obviously got the legs, the back, the different parts, but you're wanting to make it do one thing as well. And so an essay has this unity around one thing. Aboriginal students are missing out. We've got some answers, but you're also then got to make it interesting as you move into the different parts of the essay. So that's the way it's unfolds. David, any questions at all?
No, not at the moment, but if I get any, I'll send you an email or ask in the forum.
Yeah, great strategy. So any questions, send us an email and that will be fine. So let's now do a brief review of some of the topics that we have covered. And firstly, in week 1, we introduced sociology as a very valuable, useful, important method in teaching. And some of the other valuable methods include psychology, understanding how people think, educational management, so you could read leadership and management resources, pedagogy resources, how students learn. There's lots of areas that we could look at, but sociology helps us to understand students within society and what's going on. So it's one of half a dozen very useful subjects that you're encouraged to consider as part of your study journey. So sociology is important for classroom teachers because it equips them with a knowledge of skills to understand social aspects, relational aspects beyond just family, but the whole group dynamics of interacting with society that's building jobs and industry. And then there are complexities because male and female are different, gender. Complexities because people from different countries have different cultures, rural and urban differences. And then we have class structural differences. So there's all sorts of reasons for these social differences that we begin to explore in this subject. And scholars have studied this now for hundreds of years, and they've written down their findings. And if we read some of that, then we can access the sociology resources just as we can access the psychology resources, just as we can the organizational or the behavioral management resources. Lots of other studies have been done as well in each area. Now, this promotes a cultural sensitivity and awareness as we recognise every one of our 26 students comes from a different background. Some are Asian and Chinese, some are Pacific Islander, some from New Zealand Maori, some from Australian Indigenous First Nation. So we've got these different cultures that are present, and we've got some European ones with the different cultures and South African ones. So there's lots of different cultures and they value things differently. And so if you want to write a paragraph on culture, then you can Google Scholar, find out what that is. We also come from different social class. My mother came from more upper class that were working with banks and businesses, but my father came from more working class. And so I've seen both sides of the middle class and the working class. And then families have differences, and then religious settings. So I grew up in Anglican. I've had friends who've been Catholic, got married in a Presbyterian Reformed tradition, been part of Baptist and Wesleyan Methodist and Revivalist Pentecostal. So I've seen different Christian aspects, and I've had people from other aspects. So religious differences can be important as well. So we were introduced to these sociological insights, and this helps us to understand why there's inequality and discrimination. If you come from a different group, the dominant group may disadvantage the other group. This helps us with classroom management as we understand why some students feel less out and miss out and they misbehave. We can help to understand that and work with them to help get them back on track. Helps in curriculum development as we develop curricula that includes all our students. Helps us to develop critical thinking as we understand that different cultures think in different ways. Helps to develop empathy and perspective taking as we seek to understand all our students, and helps us to develop collaboration one with another, with other teachers, to develop communication skills that help every student to feel included. Helps for eventual careers that are going to be in many areas, introduced to many different cultures, and helps promote learning through every stage of life in every community we go to. So this was the first week. We're introduced to the value of sociology, and then we start to look at the ways in which a study of sociology can help us to work with our students so they'll do well. We also briefly introduced some Christian concepts such as being loving and caring and born again, and Christ-like as well. Then in the second week, we looked at the three main sociological approaches that you may still want to use in this assignment. You could revise some of the work that you're thought about. Structures and functions help classes and schools and societies do well. However, they're often written by the dominant white male people, which means that the non-white working class or people from other groups can feel squeezed out, left out, not valued, and then they can follow other ways of getting a sense of identity, becoming marginalised people in various ways. Now, following this theory of conflict theory, Bowles and Gintis write about how the conflicting values mean that when people compete for resource and opportunities, not everyone can become a doctor or a lawyer and thrive. You've got to pursue other vocational opportunities and life opportunities. Paul Willis wrote in his 1977 book, Learning to Labour, that those in the lower or working class situations often struggle to achieve, and they turn to alternative sources of identity. But often the deviant behaviour is an alternative source of identity. Stealing cars, getting high on drugs, etc., don't actually help you do so well in the life journey. And so understanding this downward spiral can help us to help students to avoid that and to go on and do much better in their life journey. Thirdly, we looked at the complex language and symbolism of symbolic interactionism. And then we went on to look at George Herbert Mead, Vygotsky, Brunner, and others who've written on symbolic interactionism. And you could look further at those. We took a few moments to reflect on your own identity as a teacher, seek to understand yourself and your values and your background, honour that, but also honour the background and identity of other students and other teachers who come from different backgrounds, and recognise if you come from a Christian background and work in a Christian school, we need an understanding of the worldview that's biblical and Christ-centred and helps us to understand those backgrounds as well. In week 4, we looked at some aspects of modernity, such as consumerism and lifestyle, rational choice theory, and other theories about the modern world. We could also look at social capital. We could also look at the ways people invest in that. In week 5, we look further at causes of inequality. I've not spent much time looking at the 3 waves or 4 waves of feminism that have sought to correct the balance where women weren't allowed to vote prior to 1900. They weren't allowed to own land. So women missed out, indigenous people similarly missed out. So I've not looked at that so much, but if you want to look at our scholarly understandings of causes and answers to the feminist challenges and why women and female gender miss out, then you could explore that with a lot of value there as well. We could also look at modernity and post-modernity, that is modernity with the industrial age and with the scientific focus on measuring things and reductionist analysis of the past, has a lot of benefits in chemistry and physics and building military hardware and in medicine, but it often loses spirituality, doesn't care for the environment, and it benefits some people more than others. And again, we could return to thinking Christianly about society, which should care for all people, but there are those who are Christians who also say that the liberalist approach also has benefits. I might ask David, what are your thoughts about those Christians who say that liberalism and individualism are biblical concepts and competition is a biblical concept? David, what are your thoughts on rather than Christianity about being loving and caring for one another, that Christianity can be a bit more American and a bit more individualist and a bit more focused on liberalism?
I've always thought I've always thought of Christianity as being a bit more collective and being a bit more about loving and caring one another.
Yes.
So in my own worldview, I don't think I think you can be individualistic. I think you can have a sense of identity and a sense of self and do those sorts of things. But at the end of the day, we're all united under God. So we're all like a collective in that sense. So I think to an extent it's there, but I for the most part don't see it as necessarily central Christian aspect.
Yeah, that's well said. And so we do have this tension between those who say Christianity is about loving and caring and a bit socialist, and those who say Christianity is neoliberalist with a focus on individualism and competition and reward those who do well. And so it's worth thinking about that. I mean, one quick solution for me is always both, and to say there are passages in scripture that talk about rewards of individuals and competition, but there are also passages that talk about loving and caring. And so that's probably a quick way out rather than to choose one or the other. If you can choose both, then that does well. But it raises questions for us sociologically about what's a Christian approach to society. And then in week 6, we looked at the nature of culture. And then now in week 7 and 8, we're returning to how we're going to apply these assignments, insights into writing a very good assignment now as well. So these are the sort of things that we have been covering each week. Now, in order to get some very good resources, if you go to Gurmov and Paul, the textbook on public sociology, in the last few chapters, they talk about ways in which you can find resources through journals, ways in which you can gather the resource material and you can think about, is this reliable? Are the scholars good scholars? And so I think there's some great insights there. There's a great section that they write in our textbook on the use of Wikipedia. And it says that many students turn to Wikipedia and there are a lot of difficulties there. So Wikipedia is an example of why you must critically evaluate it. You can't find an author. Often you can't find a date. Often you can't find the references that are being used, although it's getting better. There's some references at the end. So there's a lot of unreliability about Wikipedia. Whereas if you go to Google Scholar, then you find that you can locate the author, you can locate the references, and you can find out a lot about the resource. So if we go to sociology and teaching, and we go to Wikipedia, you'll see there that while there's some nice ideas, just like with the artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, you don't have really good material there on the that you can really quote. So sociology of education, what it's about. So they're just nice thoughts, but really they're upper primary, early high school rough notes. They're not really fully fleshed out. You got a little bit of nice thoughts on politics, beautiful thoughts on structural functionalism, but again, there's not a single reference in there. Maybe there's a reference here, so it's improving, as I say, but one reference an essay does not make. Looks like they got Durkheim 1898 here, but again, it's not a very contemporary reference, over 100 years ago. So again, it's pretty light on. But if you want a quick read, then it could give you some ideas, but certainly don't quote it or rely on it. Great ideas, but we don't know who wrote the article. We know they've used a few of these resources here. The resources are probably better than the article in some ways. But if we were to go instead to Google Scholar and put in sociology of education, every reference now has been sorted through for scholarly resources. Usually, I mean, there can be some exceptions. You might get a 1700s resource or something like that. But Musgrave's book here, Sociology of Education, Routledge is a very good publishing company, and we've got discussion of socialization of the child as they begin with family and then move into education, and then sociology of schooling. We've got the structures being discussed here. So this is really nicely written. However, it's getting a bit old now, 1965, although there's a second edition and then there are other more recent editions. So Google Scholar is usually a much better resource there. And if we
Can I
go...
ask a question?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I did get interrupted, so it's a question that was applicable just a little while ago. It's about the textbook.
Yes,
I have the most recent one,
yes,
but apparently the chapter in the previous edition,
yes,
the chapter on Indigenous Australians was actually
yes,
different. It was different and had more information in it.
yes.
I'm wondering if there's some possibility of how do I access the previous textbook?
Now, do they have that available through our library? So if you were to go to the library copy of it, do you find
I think
that...
that's the most recent one as well.
Doesn't have the older one. There should be older ones in the Heritage College Library. So are you able to get to the Heritage College Library, Nicole, or it'd be hard and you don't
Not
have the
unless
time?
I fly in a plane.
No,
I'm in
and if you
Victoria.
ask them to post it to you, they're not able to either, I suppose, are they?
I'm not quite sure. I haven't.
Yeah, they can post it, but I think you're then relying on the speed of the postage. You've got to pay to get it sent back again. And so so there's a few strategies that you can use there. But yeah, so there's some of the challenges that you face. Sometimes they'll make older copies available as well. And so if you were to go to some of the material here, and then let me so take a copy of that, Control C, so I'm making a copy and then pasting it. So I've got public sociology. So if I put that into Google Scholar, it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, I just get the book.
Yeah,
File.
and it won't let you read it.
No, it won't let me read it.
That's really bad of them, isn't it? It's so we've got the 2020 there, and
that's the most recent edition.
yeah.
The edition
It's a good
before
point
that
you raise. Yeah, I
had
guess
different information about Indigenous Australians in there.
Some people, of course, use their local libraries. They explore local libraries.
Tried that.
And have a look.
I tried
no
that.
luck.
No luck. No, they didn't have any books on sociology, and we've got one of the best libraries in Melbourne, and we didn't have any books on sociology.
Yes. Yeah. How did you find, Nicole, the book? A lot of other people have said they found the book quite useful in that it's quite focused on sociology. And then if you combine that with other resources, how did you find it, Nicole?
Yeah, I found it good. Yeah. I've just found the chapter on the Indigenous education a little bit, how would you say, it's a lot about policy, and I'm not finding it as helpful as what I think it could be for the actual assignment task itself.
Yes. So certainly if you go to the Heritage College Library and you've got a choice of the catalogue and the online journals, and you can put in Indigenous Australian education, you can search there. That's certainly one way to go, and you can get the material posted out to you, and then you've got to post it back. And so here we've got an article and a journal article and so on. So there's resources there. And then we've got all of these search engines that we can run with. And so if you do a similar search on those, you can collect those. And so, yeah, there are a couple of other ways that you could search. David, what do you find the best way to find resources on your topic area, which would be the sociologically marginalised people? What do you use the college online resources? Do you use Google Scholar? What do you find useful?
I mostly use the college database, the online one, because
Yeah,
they have access to a lot of stuff there.
that's great. Great strategy. Matthew, what do you find useful? And then Isaac.
Yeah, I use the college library and the online resources from that the college has access to.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great strategy. Isaac, what do you use and you find useful?
Yeah, likewise with the college database. But to be honest, this is the first semester I've actually realized that it was available. So I wish I'd had it previously, but it's been really good this semester.
Yeah. And one thing that can be useful is dissertations and thesis if you want to go on, and this is more in your second, third year, and then if you want to go on beyond that. But in teaching indigenous students, so if I type in teaching indigenous Australian students pedagogy, so each of these is going to give you slightly different results, isn't it? And there, if we go here, we can then bring up some lovely resources, and then you've got the full resource. David.
I just wanted to add there might be a way for you, Nicole, to access an older version. I'm not sure if it's there, but if you go to the online database, one of them's like ProQuest ebooks. So they're all electronic books. So you could try searching it and see if the college has it there.
Yes.
And you might find the older version you might be looking for, but I'm not sure if like I said, I'm not sure if it's there.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I think the secret is to do a fairly speedy 5-minute visit, and then if it doesn't succeed that way, move on and try something else, and then next day maybe try it again. I think the worst thing is sort of pushing and never getting anywhere. So I think the secret, some days you just get 4 or 5 or more great resources really quickly, and then other days you try and you don't get a single resource. It's a bit like fishing, isn't it? And so I encourage you to try different approaches and keep working with those different approaches. So we've warned that resources like Wikipedia are not going to be very good. Google Scholar, the online college databases, going to take you somewhere, show you good resources. Whenever you find a resource, we want to know who the scholar is. So you need the name of the author. When you go to just an online resource, so we just go to Google and teaching indigenous students, often you might find a resource then that might have
I don't mean to keep interrupting, Sam, but I just had
go for it.
I just had a quick look. Nicole, is the version you're looking for 2019?
Yeah, I think so.
Because it's on there. I found it on the database.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
I'll just post the link in the to the college's copy in the Zoom chat.
Thank you.
So I've just gone to a Google search on how Australia can support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders in regards to teaching. Not so easy to find the author of this resource, and when I go to the end of the resource, there's no references. So that's not going to get you such good grades. But when you go to a resource through the college resources, or you go to Google Scholar, then that is going to find you those sort of resources. So that's the sort of thing that you want. So we want the name of the author, we want the references they use, and ideally we want a scholarly publication, and a scholarly publication in terms of a book, a scholarly publication in terms of a journal article. Now, these books and journal articles that are called scholarly publications are peer reviewed. So anything that's published by Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press, etc., has to be reviewed usually by at least 2 strong scholars in that area who approve this is a scholarly piece of writing that's really well developed. So that makes it very different from just a blog post or just a newspaper article, etc. There's a huge difference between scholarly journal articles and normal articles. And even when I read, say, one of the Gospels or something like that now, I'll often go to scholars who write on the Gospel of Mark, the Gospel of Matthew, rather than just go to someone down the road who's put something up there, and then I discover that they were part of the Mormon Church of the Latter-day Saints or something like that. And then I begin to understand why it's leading me in strange directions. So scholarly articles really are a lot more reliable. Sociology also has web portals and other web resources. There's also sociology groups that you can join and be a part of if you want to explore sociology further. So if you're really excited about sociology or psychology of education, then there's a whole future that you can eventually do more of and study more of. There's also lots of other libraries down in Canberra or in the centre of your city. There are other libraries that you can go and use. There's the Bureau of Statistics that studies the actual numbers of people doing things. You can look at that. There's international organisations such as UNESCO and you can do tours of different libraries. So if you go to one university and another university, you can often do a bit of a tour. So John Gurmov and Marilyn Paul write about some of this in the last couple of chapters of the book, and we've discussed some other resources that you'll be able to use as well. So there's some of the resources that are available to you, and that's some of the material that you'll be able to use in assignment 2. Now, we're going to have one more session next week, in that I think it's a few days before your assignment is due, from my understanding. If you want to attend next week, then you can, and we can have one final discussion on your assignments, which can help give you some more thoughts there. So I'll be available and running it next week, and that'll be the final as we tie it all together. So a big thank you, Nicole, David, Matthew, Isaac, and to all the other students online. I've really enjoyed engaging with this very stimulating approach to understanding teaching. I really like practical areas of subjects I teach, like maths and science and English and other subjects I've taught, and Bible and religion and psychology and all of those. But sociology has its own unique insights, and so I really like that. So just going through now, what have you liked, Nicole, and then David, and then Matthew and Isaac, about the sociological approach to teaching? So, Nicole, what have you liked about the sociological approach to teaching?
I've found it very informative. And it's given me a new perspective on teaching, particularly in how to deal with different demographics.
I really like what you say about the different demographics, because often we don't notice them, do we? We just skip over them and try and get all our students to fit in with our approach, but to be aware of the struggles that these different demographics are having, the indigenous ones and other students from different cultures, and to then begin to understand their cultures. That makes such a big difference. David, what have you liked about sociological approaches to teaching?
I've just really liked the different perspectives that you get on education and trying to understand how think like I don't I'm trying to just look for the words. I guess I really like task one, for example, like being able to put into words your own schooling experience and then just give you that mindset of the experiences of your students. But I just love the exploration into the different theories and to how society has been constructed and to how it sort of works.
And as you said about class one, know yourself, to reflect on yourself, self-knowledge, so valuable. And then, as you say, also know how society works. Now, some people say society is very much focused on jobs, and then jobs are producing goods, like shoes and hats and all of those things that we need. But do we need them all? And so that's the thing about, say, religion. And that's the thing about worship. That takes us out of this world into the ultimate. And people say when they go for a walk in the bush, people say when they close their eyes and rest, or when they see a sunset or a sunrise, they're connecting with the ultimate. When they see a bird flying, they're connecting with the ultimate. And so I think there is something marvelous, and that's why people go to church on Sunday, is to connect with the ultimate, and you get rid of all your sins and the troubles, and you see God, and everything's going to be good. And then Monday you face a few challenges, but you go back Sunday and you get re-energized. And yeah, so I think Christianity adds another dimension to this whole discussion of what society and sociology is about. Matthew, what stood out to you? What did you really like about a sociological approach to teaching?
Mainly just looking at the different theories and just looking at the different perspectives there, and sort of getting to learn different ways of how people kind of think about society, and how our world is structured in general, and then of course the applications that has to education as well.
And of course, the big theories are structure and function. Really helps classes go together, helps things really work together. But conflict theory says that the dominant people squeeze it out. And then symbolic interactionism says that our symbols and language, it's all a lot more complex. And so these theories, and there's many more theories that we can look at that you've just been briefly introduced to, they're able to help you have some insights that you can explore further as you go along. And so it's just been a foretaste. So thank you each one for this opportunity to share this journey, to explore some of the insights from the theories. And let me pray for you now as we head off at the end of this class. And then, as I say, next week we can also be available and discuss the assignment there, and just send a message if you can't make it. That's all good too. Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the opportunity to encourage one another. We thank you for those scholars and others who've done these studies, and they've used empirical measurement to understand what's going on in classrooms and societies and families. Lord, we pray, help us to be wise in using these insights well. Thank you that you're the author of all knowledge, but you're also the author of love and care and compassion, so that we might grow to be whole and complete people. Help us in our teaching to pass on this wisdom to others, to our students and those around us, that they too might be whole and complete, we pray. Amen. So thank you each one. Any questions at all, don't hesitate to get in touch. Otherwise, a real pleasure and a joy to work with you here. Thank you.
Thanks for the semester, Sam. See you next
Thanks so
week.
much, Sam.
Thank you.